I pulled the trigger. The world split open, and hell came pouring through the crack I made. They said Vito Bellanti was untouchable, that he'd bought every cop, owned every judge, buried every problem. Tonight, he was just another man with a red dot blooming on his chest. From the 32nd floor across the street, I watched him laugh and wave another glass of whiskey over his fat gut, surrounded by bodyguards too stupid to check the skyline. The rifle's stock kissed my shoulder like an old lover. Breath steady, heart slow, 1 pound of pressure. That's all it took. The shot cracked out like a whip. Bellanti jerked once, almost comical, like a puppet on a bad string. Glass exploded behind him. His bodyguards froze, eyes wide and stupid, before the second shot ripped through the side of a bald one's skull, spraying pink mist over the dinner plates. 1, 2, 3 shots, clean, professional. It should have ended there, but then I heard it. Not sirens, screaming. Not the kind of screaming you get when bullets fly. The kind of screaming you get when something tears a man open and shows him what he's made of. I stayed low, swept the scope across the penthouse. Blood smeared the walls, but not just from my doing. One of the bodyguards, the one with half a jaw, twitched, spasmed, and then, impossibly, began to stand. His head hung at a grotesque angle, flesh shredded, teeth clicking together like an animal sniffing blood. I frowned, adjusted the focus. Another man, Bellanti's right hand Salvatore, was gnawing on a waitress, tearing strips from her face like a wolf with a fresh kill. What the hell was this? The girl thrashed, shrieking until her vocal cords shredded. I watched as 3 of Bellanti's men, all of them blood-slicked and twitching, turned their guns on the living, shooting wild before lunging into the chaos with fingernails and teeth. Gunfire erupted. People poured out of the penthouse like rats from a burning ship. But it wasn't clean escape. Some were tackled mid-sprint, others dragged screaming behind overturned furniture. I had a choice: stay and watch the freak show, or move. Experience screamed the answer. I disassembled the rifle in seconds, the click of parts locking into the case sharp and mechanical under the growing madness. Slung it over my shoulder, drew my sidearm, a battered .45, old but reliable, started for the stairwell. The hallway outside was worse. One of Bellanti's bodyguards, a giant of a man with meat-hook hands, stood slack-jawed, blood dribbling from his mouth. A secretary, pretty thing, maybe 25, sobbed at his feet. When she tried to crawl away, the bodyguard snatched her ankle and ripped it backward with enough force that her femur snapped clean through her thigh, a white spike of bone piercing her skirt. She screamed once before his boots caved her skull in. I shot him twice in the head, once through the eye, once through the forehead, and kept walking. No hesitation. No second looks. This wasn't my war. I just needed to survive it. Stairwell door was locked, but 2 shots at the latch solved that. I kicked it open and descended fast, boots echoing in the concrete tower. Floor after floor blurred past. More bodies, some moving, some already chewed into mulch. By the 20th floor, the stink was unbearable. Raw sewage, blood, and something worse. Rot. The kind of rot that should take days, not minutes. I paused at a landing, listened. Wet footsteps slapped against the concrete below. A man stumbled into view, a janitor, judging by the gray uniform. His face was a ruined mess of bite marks, one eye hanging loose by a string of meat. He snarled, an actual fucking snarl, and lunged up the stairs. I didn't aim. Instinct and training took over. One shot blew out the back of his head, spraying the stairwell walls with a fine red mist, flecked with skull shards. He collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut, but more footsteps followed, many more. Growls, low, guttural, human, but wrong. I vaulted the railing, dropping 2 floors in a controlled fall that jarred my ankles and rattled my teeth. Didn't matter. I sprinted. Bullets wouldn't save me if I got surrounded. Only speed would. By the time I hit the ground floor, the lobby was a war zone. The security desk was overturned, blood slick across the marble. Someone or something had smashed the front windows wide open. Shadows moved outside. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. The city wasn't falling apart. It was already gone. I kept my head down and moved fast toward the service exit, kicking open the emergency bar and bursting into an alley rank with rot and coppery blood. A woman staggered past me, hands clutching her stomach, her intestines unspooling between her fingers like butcher's twine. She dropped dead 3 steps later, a wet slap against the concrete. I didn't look back. I tightened my grip on the pistol and ran. One thought hammered through my skull louder than any gunfire. This wasn't about getting paid anymore. This was about not ending up on someone's fucking menu. The night was burning. Streetlights popped and fizzled overhead, the city sinking into a roiling mess of fire and screams. From the alley, I caught glimpses of people running, some staggering, some crawling, all of them painted red by the emergency lights. Most didn't make it far. I skirted around them like wreckage. 2 blocks down, a man in a business suit smashed through a convenience store window, blood dripping from his mouth like syrup. Inside, a teenager tried to fight him off with a baseball bat. The first swing connected, snapping the businessman's jaw sideways with a sickening pop. It didn't even slow him down. The kid screamed as teeth found his throat. I moved past without slowing, no weight pulling me back, no second thoughts. The dead were hunting, and I wasn't about to be easy prey. I had a safe house, 2 miles south, tucked behind an abandoned dry cleaner. A concrete box with steel doors, loaded with weapons, rations, and a car tucked into the alley. It was built for emergencies. I just hadn't expected the emergency to look like this. The first mile wasn't bad. Sticking to alleys, hopping fences, cutting through shadowed parking garages. I avoided the main roads. No point trying to outrun a panicked mob. The sounds were worse than anything I saw. The wet rip of flesh tearing loose, the hollow pop of joints snapping backward, the low, endless moan that vibrated in my teeth more than my ears. Halfway there, my luck dried up. I slipped through the back of a grocery store, hoping to cut across the parking lot unseen. Instead, I stepped into a massacre. Bodies littered the asphalt like broken dolls, some twitching, some still, some getting back up. The stench hit like a punch. Rot, blood, urine, burned plastic. At the far end of the lot, a woman in a blood-soaked lab coat was tearing strips from a man's torso with her teeth, jerking her head like a dog worried at a bone. Others noticed me, heads snapped up like deer catching a scent. They moved fast, faster than before. The first one, a teenage boy with one arm missing, lunged with a wet shriek. I fired 2 quick shots to the chest, but he kept coming. Third shot, the head. The boy folded like wet laundry. Headshots. Noted. The rest charged, 6 of them, maybe more behind. No time to be clean. I sprinted across the lot, vaulting a crumpled shopping cart, blasting 2 more with chest shots that slowed them just enough. One grabbed at my jacket, fingernails ripping fabric as I drove my boot into its knee, shattering it backward with a pop. It still tried to crawl after me, dragging itself by broken fingers. I didn't waste a bullet. Kept moving. By the time I reached the far alley, I could barely hear my own boots over the howling behind me. I didn't stop running until I hit the safe house door. A slab of steel bolted into reinforced brick. Sweat poured into my eyes. My hand shook as I keyed in the code. The door clicked open. Relief punched through my ribs. Sanctuary, until I smelled it. Rot, heavy, sweet, unmistakable. I drew the .45 again and edged inside. The main room was dark except for a single emergency lamp flickering above the workbench. Something was sprawled across the cot. My safe contact, Frankie, or what was left of him. His throat was torn out, a gaping hole still glistening wet. His right arm hung by a few strands of tendon. Worse, his jaw was unhinged, flopping uselessly against his chest as he twitched. And twitched and twitched. Frankie's eyes, milky, blind, locked onto me. He surged upward with a wet growl, knocking over the cot, feet dragging uselessly behind him. I stepped back and fired twice. The first shot blew off part of his scalp. The second slammed through his forehead, splitting it open like rotten fruit. He dropped without ceremony. I moved fast, sweeping the rest of the room. The weapons cache had been smashed, guns missing, ammo scattered. The getaway car, gone. A blood trail leading right out the rear door told me all I needed to know. I was trapped in the city, on foot, surrounded. I grabbed what I could, a combat knife, a few loaded mags, a lightweight shotgun with a short barrel and half a box of shells. It wasn't nearly enough, but it would have to be. The radio crackled nearby, the emergency police band I kept running in case of heat. The voice on the other end was distorted, drowning in static, but a few words made it through. Hospital, overrun, burning, quarantine, shoot to kill, shoot to kill. I looked out the cracked window. Smoke rolled through the skyline. Fires bloomed on rooftops. Helicopters hovered in the distance, but they weren't landing. They were pulling back. The dead weren't just here. They were everywhere. I slid the last mag into my belt and kicked the door open. Outside, a fresh wave of howls rose to meet me. No time to plan, no time to hide. I did what I was trained to do. I picked a direction, and I ran toward the fight. The streets bled bodies. Everywhere I turned, the dead outnumbered the living 10 to 1. They poured from shattered storefronts, clambered over wrecked cars, filled the alleys like floodwater made of teeth and rot. I didn't bother counting rounds anymore, just squeeze, reload, move. The shotgun blew open chests and heads with sick, wet cracks, spraying the pavement in arcs of meat and bone. Shell after shell fed into the breach until the weapon boiled hot in my hands. At the base of a gutted department store, I found temporary shelter. A service stairwell lined with rusted maintenance pipes and sagging drywall. It wouldn't hold, but it would buy me a few minutes. I jammed a broken broom through the handles of the door and got to work. Out came the knife. I slit the canvas strap off my pack, fastened tripwires across the stairwell, tied the other ends to loose shelving ready to collapse when yanked. Crude, ugly, effective. The first infected slammed into the door seconds later, rattling the frame. A moan, low and ragged, vibrated through the metal. I gripped the shotgun tighter and let my breathing even out. This was always the way it was going to end. Not in a clean shot, not with a whispered confession, not with money changing hands under a dirty table. No. It ended here, covered in someone else's blood, fighting for inches of ground no one would ever remember. The door gave with a metallic scream. They spilled in, not shambling, not staggering, running, howling like animals fresh from the kennel. The first one hit the wire and tripped, bringing down a rusted shelf that crushed 3 more behind it. I stepped forward into the gap and fired. The first blast vaporized a face. The second opened a woman's rib cage like a rotten cabinet, organs spilling wetly onto the tile. They kept coming. Some missing arms, some dragging shattered legs, some so torn open you could see the bones swinging inside like marionette sticks. They didn't care. Pain was gone. Fear was gone. Only hunger. The shotgun emptied. I dropped it and drew the knife, the blade gleaming wet and black. A man in a business suit lunged. I sidestepped, driving the knife under his chin and out through the top of his skull. Twisted, yanked free, blood fountained across my chest, warm and sticky. Another came from the side, a teenager missing half her face, her tongue wagging loose from her jaw. I rammed her into the wall, crushed her skull against the concrete until her body stopped jerking. Another. And another. They tore at me with broken fingers, snapping jaws. A bite grazed my forearm, teeth dragging shallow grooves across my skin. Close, too close. I kicked the attacker back and slit his throat, feeling the cartilage pop beneath the blade. I was slowing, bleeding, breath heaving, vision tunneling. A roar built behind my eyes, drowning out everything. The stairwell filled with them, bodies packed so tight, the walls shuddered under their weight. I stumbled back, shoulder slamming against a maintenance door, hanging half off its hinges. Inside, dim light. An old maintenance office, concrete walls, no windows, one door in, no way out, good enough. I fell inside and slammed the door shut, jamming a rusted metal cabinet against it. The infected battered at the door, fists thudding like war drums. I slid down against the far wall, breathing ragged. The room smelled like old oil and burnt plastic. Papers littered the floor, shipping manifests, maintenance reports, incident files. One caught my eye, the letterhead. Vira Clean Solutions. Not police, not fire department, not Center for Disease Control. Vira Clean. The file was stamped. Property damage report, chemical decontamination, downtown Sector 7. Incident type, biological exposure, containment level, failed. I barked a laugh that turned into a bloody cough. Of course. Of fucking course. The infected outside howled louder, fists splintering the doorframe. The metal cabinet shifted inch by inch. I pulled the last weapon from my belt. A fragmentation grenade, stolen from a dead SWAT cop 2 blocks back. Pulled the pin, held it in my hand, cool and heavy. No whimpering, no begging, no prayers. I'd done dirty work my whole life. Tonight I'd make sure the debt was paid. The door blew open. Rotting faces poured through. I smiled, a broken, bloody grin, and let the grenade fall from my fingers. White light swallowed the world. And then, nothing. If you're still breathing, go ahead and like the video. Subscribe if you dare. There are plenty more nightmares waiting for you. And whatever you do, don't forget to ring the bell. It's the only way you'll hear the warnings in time.